At 12:17 a.m., my watch buzzed on see no chime. No light, just that single haptic tap I'd trained myself to feel even in sleep. The laundry window code JN LND1 had gone from closed to ajar, then held for 3 seconds, exactly like a careful hand easing a latch. I sat up without turning on a lamp, slid my feet into shoes I keep at the side of the bed, and felt the strange calm that shows up when your body finally meets the moment your mind's been rehearsing for months. I'm Evan Brooks, single dad, systems guy, and the stubborn owner of a modest ranch house on a cul-de-sac called Willow Switch in a place the brochures sell as Juniper Ridge, Colorado. The brochures leave out the part about our homeowners association, which, under a woman named Lydia Crane, had turned community standards into a weapon. Lydia used to work records for the city's code office, never a cop, but she wore that fluorescent vest like a badge, carried a clipboard like a gavel, and collected allies the way other people collect refrigerator magnets. She cited me for my mailbox being non-compliant, for a toy left in the yard, for leaving my trash can at the curb 57 minutes longer than the covenant allowed. She wellness checked my son, Miles, by calling child services twice over nothing. Both times the caseworkers apologized at the door, eyes tired and kind. Anyway, back to the window. I patted down the hallway, letting the house's muscle memory carry me. The soft give of the runner rug, the faint resin smell of the new window trim, the click of the baseboard sensor when my knee grazed it. I'd built the system after the second bogus fine. Hardwired sensors, not Wi-Fi. A closed-loop recorder bolted inside a steel box in the attic. Rolling shutters tucked into the soffits. A narrowband siren that doesn't scream so much as vibrate your sternum. A fogger unit that eats the air and replaces it with clouds. I taught Miles what to do if the haptics ever tapped. Get to the closet, headphones on, hands on the little air horn, but don't use it unless you can't hear me. We practiced that drill like a game, then retired it each Sunday with pancakes. When I reached the laundry room, I could see the sliver of night through the frame. A hand glove touched the latch, and I saw the tiny smear I'd left there 3 days ago, a UV gel, invisible now, bright as a comet under a certain light. The hand lifted, and the window rose just enough for a face to slide in the dark like a puzzle piece finding its place. Lydia wasn't alone. She never is, even when she's the only person in the room. She brings a whole courtroom in with her imaginary rules, imaginary authority, imaginary applause. She stepped inside utility boots, black windbreaker, hair in a tight twist, and I noticed zip ties looped at her belt like a snake's ribs. Emergency inspection, she said into the dark in this flat, bureaucratic tone, as if the words themselves made it lawful. Potential gas leak reported. The house held its breath with me. Gas leak creative. She must have workshopped that with her friends in Blockwatch. I let her take 2 slow steps toward the kitchen, listened to the leather creak on her clipboard strap, and then I spoke from the doorway like I'd practiced in the mirror, not loud, not threatening, just there. Lydia, I said, and even hearing her name in my mouth like that felt like setting a glass on a coaster, controlled, stable. We're going to do this calmly. She spun fast, flashlight beam catching a cabinet handle, shooting a white scar across the fridge. Mr. Brooks, I have authority to enter in emergencies. Failure to cooperate can result in. I pressed the first button on the little fob I keep on my belt loop. The shutters dropped. Thump, thump, thump across the windows, a heartbeat rolling around the house. Lydia flinched. Then I pressed the second button, and the fogger coughed once and started to fill the kitchen with this dense, cool mist that looked like it belonged on a stage. I stepped back so she wouldn't feel cornered, and I let the recorder keep timestamping in the attic. Doors open to the front porch, I said. You can walk straight out. You're not to touch anything else. I am conducting an inspection, she snapped, backing up into the fog. And I'm noting your attempt to obstruct. Lydia, do not move toward me, I said, and I surprised myself with how steady it came out. Hands visible, eyes on the floor. Walk to the front door. It's the only door that will open. There's a particular kind of power in refusing to perform the role someone wrote for you. She'd expected me to shout, to pinball around, to swing or panic. Instead, I was an usher at a theater, pointing the way out while the fog made theater of the kitchen. She tried to bull forward anyway, shoulder first. So I lifted my phone and took a series of stills. Pop, 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 each flash briefly painting her in hard white edges. Then I clicked the third button on the fob, and the siren hummed this low, insistent note that doesn't say danger so much as witness. It's a frequency that travels through drywall better than air. I wanted neighbors' phones, eyes, human echoes. I wanted daylight in the middle of the night. She lunged once for the recorder box under the sink, the decoy I'd put there on purpose, and I caught the strap. Not her, because I didn't need to touch her to prove anything. Out, I said again, and I could feel my heart in my ears but not in my voice. You don't live here. Out, on the porch, neighbors gathered like moths to a porch light. Hector Valdez from 3 houses down shuffled up in slippers, thermos in hand. The radio geek who hears more on a Sunday night than most hear all week. Teresa Monroe filmed from her steps. Mr. Patel slipped on his jacket and said nothing, which is his way of saying everything. I opened only the front door, left the rest sealed, and stepped into the frame so the camera on the trim would catch my profile and the crowd. This is an evidence scene. I said not for drama, just for record. Suspected unlawful entry by the HOA president. Recording in progress. No one crossed the threshold. Lydia hit the front hall from inside the fog and stopped when she saw the people. She tried to square her shoulders, chin high, clipboard forward, the whole pageant. There's been a gas leak reported at this residence, she announced, voice clear, as if sheer diction could summon a warrant out of thin air. I conducted an emergency inspection. The resident obstructed. I turned my wrist and clicked on the UV pen light. Her gloves lit up like she'd bathed in starlight. The latch on the laundry window glowed too, a smear exactly where the gel had been. I said nothing for a beat, let the image do the heavy lift, then, quietly. That mark means a gloved hand opened a secured window. That glow on your gloves matches the same compound. For the record, Hector made a little low sound he probably didn't mean to make. Phones came up and steadied like a chorus. The first responding officer rolled up with his partner, and you could feel the air change, body cams humming, radios squawking, shoe soles gritting on the walkway. He looked at Lydia the way you look at a city council member, deferent out of habit. She started in on him right away. Officer, we received a report of gas. I initiated a safety check per covenant section, and I could see him moving to that soft place where everybody's right and nobody's accountable. So I handed him a thumb drive. 90 minutes of pre-alarm footage, I said, plus the window event, plus stills. Cameras are private, closed loop, the kind of chain of custody a judge doesn't roll their eyes at. I'm not pressing pause or rewind. You are. He studied the drive, studied the glowing gloves, studied the neighbors filming, and you could see him recalibrate. We're going to secure the scene, he said, and that word, secure, landed right, and request a supervisor. I called State Patrol myself. There's a hotline for when local politics feel sticky, and said it plain. Suspected unlawful entry by an HOA officer with a documented history of harassment, possible tampering with resident property, evidence preserved. When Sergeant Bellamy and Detective Elena Ruiz arrived, they didn't bring whatever old favors Lydia was leaning on. They brought tripods for their body cams and the kind of questions that stack facts in order. Miss Crane, what brought you to the Brooks residence tonight? Ruiz asked. Gas leak complaint. An anonymous caller, Lydia said, finding a smile she must have practiced in the bathroom mirror before every meeting. Anonymous to whom? To the HOA hotline, she said, and I watched her realize she'd just admitted the complaint lived only inside her own ecosystem. Do you have the recording? Ruiz asked. It's after hours, Lydia said, tiny crack in the voice. Ruiz gestured to my front door like a magician revealing a card that was already in your pocket. We have the video of you entering a window, she said evenly. Let's start with that. They read her rights on my porch while the fog machine wound down and the shutters lifted slowly like eyelids after a nap. The cuffs clicked, not loud, not dramatic, just a second hand finding the minute. No one cheered. I didn't either. It wasn't a win. It was a correction, a plumb line you drop to see if the frame is straight. The next day, Elena Ruiz knocked on my door with a warrant in process and a question. We found a pattern of midnight inspections logged on HOA forms, but I need to show a judge more than pattern. Do you have anything that puts her at additional scenes? I did. I'd stuck a sliver of a passive Trackera legal one, the kind runners use for their gear, under the corner of the HOA's certified letter to me 2 weeks earlier, just to see if the letter traveled anywhere curious before it reached my mailbox. It had the envelope took 3 extra errands, each within a mile of our subdivision storage facility. Elena raised an eyebrow, then left for the courthouse. 2 days later, they cut a padlock on Unit C-14, rented in the name of a shell vendor who turns out to be Lydia's cousin. Inside, a pegboard map of Juniper Ridge with pins red for repeat offenders, yellow for watch, green for compliant. A milk crate of fake notice of entry slips and signed. An old scanner tuned to police and county maintenance. A ring of blank keys and a little USB stick labeled door codes. A legal pad with notes like Brook School at 7:50 Soccer Tuesday/Thursday. That one sat in my stomach like a stone. At the emergency HOA meeting, they packed the community room so tight the AC couldn't keep up. The board chair, Oliver Pike, sat up front like a man who'd swallowed a lemon whole. I stood next to a projector on a rolling car-told school while Detective Ruiz controlled the playback from her laptop. We watched Lydia step through my laundry window on the biggest screen I could rig from the library's equipment, watched the shutters drop, watched her gloves glow like a cheap planetarium show. When the clip ended, no one moved for a breath. I just want to say, Oliver began, voice papery, that none of us condoned. Teresa raised her hand and didn't wait to be recognized. You sent me handwritten fines with smiley faces, she said to the table, and her voice shook the way voices do when fear finds anger to ride. Over a pumpkin on my porch. In November, Mr. Patel, who rarely speaks in more than 4 words, said 6 that cracked like a knuckle. You made my wife cry twice. Hector cleared his throat and produced a little audio clip. His ham radio rig had picked up one of Lydia's late-night calls to a friend, the gist being that some households needed to learn the hierarchy. The board had nothing to say to that. They voted to suspend her, of course, then to remove her, then to cooperate fully with the investigation, which is to say they cooperated exactly as much as the subpoena demanded. The legal part moved like a glacier and then, suddenly, like a rock slide. The DA filed charges for criminal trespass, burglary, stalking, and a catch-all count for possessing tools, those blank keys, while intending to use them for a crime. A judge denied her first bail because the pattern mattered, then granted a conditional one with an ankle monitor, then finally accepted a plea that kept her out of prison but put her on probation long enough to learn what years feel like when you count them in restrictions. She wasn't the only one. 2 of her committee pals lost their little soapboxes too, one of them for tampering with mail. The city did a gentle audit of our police department's relationship with the HOA. 3 officers went on administrative leave. Best practices got rewritten. It wasn't perfect. It was movement. At home, I lifted most of the shutters back up into their housings and stacked the extra motion pucks in a bin. The kitchen smelled like lemon oil and not fog for the first time in months. Miles slept through a whole Saturday without waking to imaginary knocks. We retired the drill for real with pancakes, of course, and my hands didn't shake when I poured syrup. I kept the cameras up but turned off the low-light flash burst unless the house is empty. I don't need to live in a fortress. I just need the world to know it can't walk in like it owns the place. Some nights I sit on the front steps with a mug and listen to the new quiet, which is not the old quiet at all. The old quiet was waiting for the next tap on the watch, the next certified letter, the next smile with teeth in it. The new quiet is a thin, clean thing, like the air right after a storm when everything still drips and the light hasn't found its courage. Neighbors wave now. Teresa leaves cuttings from her basil in a little jar by our mailbox. Mr. Patel built a birdhouse with his daughter and installed it in the common green, even though the covenants once forbade unauthorized structures. No one has said a word about it. Good. I'd love to tell you that's the end, that justice rolled down like water and everyone remembered how to be neighbors again. Mostly yes, but not fully. The board rewrote the bylaws with a reset to basic decency: trash cans at the curb after 6. Cut your grass, fix your fence, don't be a jerk-in, yet the same people who clap for that language keep asking whether the old fines can be reinstated case by case, which is just a new door on the same old house. Lydia's cousin still drives through the neighborhood slow some afternoons, and every time I catch that car in a reflection, I feel the ghost of the old drill in my legs move. Plan. Be small until you're not. A week after the plea hearing, I found an envelope taped to my door with no return address, thin bond paper, typed. You could have handled it privately, it said. You humiliated a neighbor, and you enjoyed it. I read it twice, let the insult cool down into a question, and carried it inside. Maybe there's truth in there I should hold about the draw of being right in public, about the rush of having the crowd on your side. Or maybe that's just what bullies write when the lights come up. I don't know. I know this. I didn't set a trap. I built a boundary, and then I documented what tried to cross it. Sometimes I replay the first seconds, the watch buzz, the quiet, the way my house felt like it took my hand. I think about how easy it is to confuse authority with care, rules with safety, how fast a clipboard can turn into a cudgel when, for long enough, no one says, "Hold on, show me your warrant. Show me your reason. Show me why I should open my door to you at all." I didn't defeat Lydia. I defeated the idea that she could write herself a badge. If you're hearing this, and you live somewhere with a board, a committee, a covenant stapled to your sense of home, you already know the tension I'm talking about, the way the sidewalk can feel owned by someone else's clipboard. Maybe you've had your own midnight inspection, your own anonymous complaint that sounded like your neighbor's voice with the edges sanded off. And maybe you think I went too far. Shutters, fog, UV dye, sirens that called everyone to my porch like a little trial under the porch lighter. Maybe you think I didn't go far enough, that some people only learn when a judge reads their name into a record book louder than I ever could. Either way, here's where I leave it with you. If this happened on your street, would you have kept it quiet to protect the neighborhood? Or would you have rolled the footage and let everyone see, even if it meant admitting how afraid you'd been for months? Tell me where your line is, what's worth turning the cameras on, what's worth opening the door, and where you'd stand when the person with the clipboard finally steps inside. Drop your take in the comments. Share this with the neighbor who always has a story about the HOA. And if you've got your own midnight, buzz the watch tap, the knock, the anonymous letter, tell us what you did or what you wish you'd done. Let's talk about what justice looks like when it knocks on a regular door like mine.